Now, today's conversation is especially important, and I want you to know why. We're talking about why leaders can't afford to lead alone and what it's costing us. One of the things that I want you all to know this morning specifically is if you stay with me, I'm going to share with you a couple of things. Why isolation has become one of the greatest risks in leadership, how to rethink community and think beyond surface level networking, and what kind of support leaders actually need right now to lead with clarity and sustainability. Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to see all of you as we're streaming live to YouTube. Thank you to all of you who have joined via LinkedIn. Really grateful that you're here today. And before we go any further, if this resonates with you, go ahead and like and share, subscribe, and stay connected to future conversations like this. Hello, welcome to Mindset Monday. I'm Dr. Ariel, executive coach, consultant, and professor, and I work as a strategist for mission-driven organizations and corporations that advise or corporations that prioritize inclusive and communication and cultures, and as an executive coach for high-profile public figures and high net worth individuals. So let's just name the moment that we're in. Again, welcome to those of you who are joining us live from LinkedIn and from YouTube and Zoom. I see Pat. Hey, Pat is in, Dr. Pat Sanders is in the Zoom. So many of you are joining us from a couple of places. And thank you to those of you who just joined us specifically from the Everyone Who Needs a Champion community. So really grateful to see you all this morning. So let's just name the moment we're in. Headlines feel heavy. Every time we scroll, it feels like instability, uncertainty, and division is just everywhere. And when we work, even when we look at work and life, they aren't objectively falling apart for the most part. But the perception of chaos is really exhausting. Loneliness has become this epidemic amongst many leaders, and many of you are carrying responsibility without relief. You're expected to be steady while everything around you feels unsteady. And somewhere along the way, leadership becomes synonymous with doing it by yourself. So I want to start off by asking you this really hard question. Who told you that you were supposed to be doing this alone? Think about that for a second. Who told you that you were supposed to be doing this alone? If you're here for the first time, just process that because if y'all know, I ask a lot of questions, ask a lot of reflection questions. But if you're here for the first time, this space, Mindset Mondays, exists to help leaders take pauses to think clearly about how we lead, how we live, and how we sustain ourselves in seasons that demand a lot from us. And so, if you've been in here for previous sessions of Mindset Mondays, you already know these conversations are truly a focused opportunity to reflect, a true opportunity to set the tone for the month, let alone the week, right? That's why I host them on the first Monday of the month. But they're about alignment and wisdom and leadership that lasts. And so again, if you're joining me from LinkedIn, or several of you I think are joining from LinkedIn or watching from LinkedIn, you're watching this replay on YouTube. I'm glad you're here, and I encourage you to share this with someone who you know is leading or even living, as many of us are, through complexity right now. Mindset Monday is a feature of my online community. Everyone Needs a Champion, my coaching community, which I launched in 2023 as a space for leaders to pause, think, and recalibrate. And over the last couple of months, we've been opening up these sessions to the public as we get a chance to rebuild and reimagine that community and to really, really figure out what the needs are for you all who are joining us. And so I'm grateful that you all are here today. So in November, we talked about winning at leadership in the new norm. I think December, our Mindset Monday was about executive positioning and executive presence. And then last month, can't believe we're already in month two of 2026. Last month in January, we grounded ourselves in executive stewardship. I need a little tissue. We grounded ourselves in executive stewardship, figuring out how leaders can be better caretakers of three things, a framework that I love to use in working with clients, how leaders can be better caretakers of processes, profits, and most importantly, people. And so today we're looking at what it means to lead in community and avoid leading alone. This session is about reclaiming community as a leadership strategy and not as a social preference. So let's get into it, and we'll do some Q&A. As I said, I do a lot of reflection. So this is an opportunity for you to take notes, get your mindset right for the month, and then we'll do some Q&A at the end. And I'll be watching YouTube as well to see if there are any comments or questions in the chat. I did not get any pre-submitted questions. Every once in a while, someone will send questions or kind of share what their scenario is that they're navigating right now, and I get a chance to give feedback to it. So I wanted to give you all a chance to ask any questions. Most times we have a good amount of folks in the Zoom, and so folks are able to ask questions in the Zoom. So let's jump in. What's interesting about, as I said, where we are, loneliness, I believe, has quietly become a leadership epidemic. Last year, I had the pleasure, 2024 and 25. I can't say 24, it was last year because it wasn't, but 2024 and 2025, we're now in 2026 for those of you who are going to watch this later. Uh, but for about a year and a half, I had the opportunity to be a facilitator as an executive coach in a community called Kinship. And it was a community exactly how it sounds. It was focused on connecting folks around life's challenges and even life's joys and what that felt like and what that looked like. And so there will be a video, opening video. It's kind of the topic of the day, or you could come to the session with the topic already prescribed and named for you. And and I would facilitate those sessions in the group. And one of the things that that community kinship anchored itself on was understanding how loneliness has become this epidemic, if you will, and how many people are thinking through and living through life outside of community. And so I'm really grateful to have had that experience and have met the people that are a part of that community, because essentially many of us didn't get isolated by accident. Unfortunately, we chose it. Many times I believe in society, just the way society, American society specifically, the way society has positioned, the way we are conditioned us to think about how we're supposed to operate in the world. Much of this is focused on individualistic, lifestyles versus a collectivistic lifestyle, which puts us in community. And so I often ask sometimes, even in those groups, with the kinship opportunity to be within that community, but also even with the clients that I serve, I often have to toggle their understanding or their questioning around what it means to do life by yourself. So let's get into a few quiet but more necessary questions. You don't need to answer them out loud. As I said, most times in Mindset Mondays, I ask a lot of reflection questions for you to write down, think about, process. All right, so just sit with this for a little while. What made you believe that needing people was a weakness? Not saying that you do, but what do you think perhaps makes us lean toward the idea that needing people is a weakness? Who told you, next question, who told you perhaps that you don't have anything valuable to offer? And perhaps here's one. When did community, especially for those of us who are busy professionals and have a lot of responsibility, and also have operated as maybe as a solopreneur or a solo contributor, when did community become a nice to have instead of a necessity? Process that and think about that for me. Because often when we think about how we show up in community, we're often thinking about what it means to get versus give. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. So just the fact that we might get rarely inconvenienced to be in community makes us position ourselves for more isolation. But I want to tell you a quick story. I recently worked with a leader as a coach. I was recently working with a leader who had high stakes decisions to make on a daily basis. They were dealing with budget cuts and restructuring and performance issues, things of that nature. But then on paper, they were really functioning well. The leader was functioning very well, although the organization had a lot going on. And privately, the client admitted to me, I haven't talked through a real decision with anyone in years. And that was immediately problematic to me. It literally hurt my heart, literally. Because leadership was never meant to be a solo sport. So as I think about what my client said, as I think about the idea that they were operating in a solo capacity, and they never literally admitted to me that they had not walked through a decision-making process with anyone in years. They had not invited anyone into that process. They had not invited anyone into even the brainstorming process. They had been operating in this isolated capacity as a leadership for a long, long time. And it literally broke my heart, especially in the way that they communicated it. And so what we talked through was that isolation in many ways creates loneliness. And even more dangerously, as a leader, isolation often creates blind spots. Because when leaders operate alone, a couple things that I've noticed here, and you may relate to this as well. Risks increase because your decisions are going unchallenged. You don't have anyone around you who's sharp or informed enough to bounce ideas off of. And so your risk can increase because these decisions often go unchallenged. And sometimes, if you have a lot of power at stake, these decisions can go unchecked. Also, I've noticed in my work that when leaders operate alone, burnout accelerates. You can't go further faster by yourself many times, although you think you can, because oftentimes we see people in community, we see them as baggage, right, versus benefit. And so many times when leaders go alone, burnout often accelerates because your pressure, you don't have anywhere to place your pressure. You can't release, you can't vent, you can't express those frustrations in a productive space. Not just necessarily, yeah, I have somebody to call and express my frustrations to and vent to, but is that actually a productive space? And I believe community gives you that. I also believe when leaders lead alone, their perspective often narrows because they feel like everything is either personal, they often wear their hearts on their sleeve, or they feel like everything is urgent. You are in your own head constantly. And if you're not careful, you'll get stuck there. And before you know it, you are 3 years behind your own growth and development because you are the only voice that you rely on. And so, wanted to walk us through some dangers of continuing to lead or leading alone and leading outside of community. Now, here's an important distinction I want to make. Let's clarify something that often gets blurred. It's the difference between community and networking. All right. Now, some of you who are here or watching from LinkedIn, or you are here from LinkedIn, or you got invited from LinkedIn, right? You may have thousands of connections. I have almost 10,000 connections there. You may have a ton of connections, but connections don't always equal support, right? I'll make a distinction here. I want to make a distinction between networking and community. Because often networking, and while it is necessary, networking often asks, who can I meet in this room? And I was literally processing this last night. Networking often asks, who can I meet in this room? Whereas community will ask, who can speak my name when I am not in the room? I thought that was powerful. Yes, I thought that was powerful. And not just because I'm leading this session and I created the materials, but because I've lived through this, right? I've lived through going into an event or connecting with someone, even if it's a virtual room. Who can I meet from? What am I going to gain from this opportunity? Which is my next point. But who am I going to meet in this room? Where when there's a mindset shift in your community mind, you're often thinking, who can speak my name when I'm not in the room? And for someone to speak your name when you're not in the room, that means that there's likely a relationship where they know who you are and they know what you're about. Also, I think networking asks, as I said earlier, what can I gain? Whereas community asks, what can I give? On the I can't remember if it was our December session where we talked about executive stewardship or the November session where we talked about executive positioning. It may have been executive positioning, executive presence in November, where we talked about, I made the point about what it means to focus on what you can give when you're in community or what you can give as a leader, right? And what that looks like and what that means. I also think another point I want to share with you, networking asks, who sees me as relevant? Because for some reason, we have this obsession with being relevant or relevancy, right? For ourselves, right? For people to see us as important. I don't know if that comes from social media or I don't know where that comes from, but networking asks, who sees me as being relevant? Whereas I believe community asked and said, who holds me accountable? Because again, I think that we have developed this obsession, if you will, with being in proximity to importance, right? Versus as we show up in a space and as we show up in community in a particular space, Are the people there? Is iron sharpening iron in this space? Can I hold others accountable, and can they hold me accountable in a position where there's growth potential? So I see Dr. Pat has said in the chat, community is about connection. It is not about mining, absolutely. And I was just about to say that networking often, we need it. Networking is often transactional. It's about access, and we do need that. But community is transformational. It is about alignment. Both have a place, but they're not the same thing. And they don't produce the same outcomes for leaders. Because when you think about, as I said earlier, networking being about proximity, you realize that community is more about presence. So, another short story I want to share with you about a client that I worked with recently. When organizations bring me in as a thought partner, it's often not because they lack intelligence or, they don't have the expertise to do certain things. It's because they need shared thinking. Many times, there's often inside of organizations, there's a culture of this disjointed thinking. Organizations struggle with cultivating real consensus building at times, and so the outcomes look good externally, the numbers, the strategy, the results. But internally, the process to getting there was treacherous. There was drama and conflict. It was brutal. It was traumatic. Why? Because that organization had not invested in the culture of community. And community, I believe, does three things that leaders cannot do alone. As I said, connection to earlier, it challenges your assumptions, it slows down reactive decision making, and it creates accountability beyond titles. And we talked in November when we talked about executive presence, we talked about the difference between your title and your actual, transformation quality. Because when you speak something loud in community, it either sharpens or it exposes what needs to be worked. And I believe both are gifts. The isolation inside of leadership isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. Because I believe that I've seen it time and time again. I believe that when leaders operate in isolation, the risk increases, the burnout accelerates, and the blind spots go unchecked. You don't have a place to process your uncertainty out loud. You don't have a mirror for your assumptions. You don't have a space to say, I'm not sure, without feeling exposed. And so often we confuse what that means and what that looks like as leaders. And I think that a true community for a leader, it will strengthen decision making. It will strengthen accountability. It will strengthen discernment, and it will strengthen even sustainability. So we have to make sure we're not treating community. I think this is important too. I see this a lot, either in the individual coaching one-on-one with high profile public figures, or even in the consulting work that I do. We have to make sure we're not treating community as like this soft benefit, right? It's just a soft benefit, because the challenge with that is that we kind of treat it like it's a nice to have. But also, I want to share with you something that hit me recently. And I think we need to revamp our idea of the family narrative. Walk with me on this one. We hear leaders say we're family a lot. You work for a company, and even when you're in the interview process, they say, well, we're a family. And I don't know how many organizations still say that, but we know traditionally we've heard of families saying, or families, companies saying, or leaders saying, we're a family here. Everyone's a family. It just feels like family, right? I think that can be problematic. I do. Community matters for organizations, of course, but we have to be careful, because I believe the rhetoric of we are family is expired. When leaders say we are a family, I believe that we can unintentionally blur boundaries. I believe that that rhetoric sometimes can minimize the power dynamics. Yeah. I also believe, but specifically as it relates to how others interact. Think about the power dynamics of a family. There's hierarchy to a certain extent. There's rank, if you will, sometimes in certain families. There's a level of respect sometimes that can be, as I said, you kind of blur those boundaries as it relates to what you're willing to do, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, etc. Right? You're more willing to perhaps make a decision that's more beneficial or more sacrificial for your family, because these are the people that you are indebted to specifically, right? and responsible for and responsible to. But the power dynamic in a company, in a workplace, is different. And if we put it in the context of family, there can be some abuse there. There can be some distrust there. And I think also the rhetoric of we're family, sometimes it silences something that could be a healthy dissent, a healthy pushback, a healthy conflict, a healthy disagreement. And so I want to suggest that workplaces are not families. Workplaces are systems of responsibility, accountability, and trust. And so I don't know, think about that, chew on that. I hope that organizations will start to decide not to use that language as much anymore, especially if they have not cultivated safe, psychologically safe, transparent, a community that's rich in culture. If they haven't cultivated that, I don't think it's safe for them to say we're a family. That's why community at work, I believe, cannot be treated as a soft benefit or like this cultural just nicety. Community has to be a leadership strategy that's embedded inside the organization. And part of maturing as leaders includes, I believe, revamping that family narrative, we're a family, right, into something that's healthier and clearer and more sustainable. Now, let's name this plainly. Community does not necessarily give you everything you need, but you need to be keen about what it can give you. Perspective, I believe, it gives you perspective when you're too close to the problem. Many of us have experienced that. It gives you language when you are stuck, but you cannot articulate why. I believe too, and I've seen this for myself and for the people that I serve, it gives you emotional regulation when everything feels urgent. And it gives you a chance to reinforce your confidence in a way that's quiet and not necessarily loud and problematic. And this applies to you, especially if you are a solo contributor, you're building something on your own, which for me is what I've experienced and the folks that I serve, and even my own journey as an entrepreneur. This is the loneliest road when you're building something on your own. But it also applies, of course, if you're in transition. Many folks are in transition right now, and even those who are employed full time. This applies because the complexity of what you do and the complexity of your life and your careers, it demands companionship. And so many of you get to a point, and I realized this a couple of years ago, many of us get to a point where we realize you've gone as far as you can go by yourself. Process that for a second. You've gone as far as you can go by yourself. And you may say, Dr. Ariel, I have community. I love my community. I have people. But listen, I want to be honest with you. I've heard so many people say, I have community. I have community. I love community. And they are drowning, failing when they're saying this to me. Absolutely about to break. I have community. And what they're thinking is, what they're trying to say is, I have community. I have people who care about me. I have people who are accomplished and high level contributors in their companies, and they are vetted professionals. And I have these phenomenal, I know people. That's what they're saying. I know people and I have access to people. But what they're not saying is, I'm in community with those people. I know how to interact with those folks or utilize their expertise and be in a safe space with them and to connect with them when I need to work through a challenge. When I have a win and I want somebody to share it with, when I have a new idea and I need to bounce it off of someone, when I am in a space where I thought I was doing good, and then I realized I wasn't doing good, and I'm confused. I don't know what to do with that now. Or I thought I had a really good idea, and it actually is not it's not great execution. It may be a great idea, but the execution is not what it could be. And I just hold that to myself, right? I don't share that with anyone. That's often what people are saying when they are offended almost. When I say to them, you don't have community, offended because they're thinking about all the people that they have access to. What they don't realize is that you haven't accessed them. You haven't accessed them for not only your own good, but for their good either. You're not giving to them either, right? very transactional in some ways, or very kind of, distant, if you will. And many of us need to re-identify what we get from community, the ones we're already a part of and the ones we know we're missing. Now, I want to give you a couple of points on how to pull all this together. And community doesn't mean, in this social media like overwhelm that we're experiencing, online overwhelm, outrage everywhere, all of this that we're seeing, even in the age of influencers. I have another kind of, I guess, thing that I want to either write or research about when it comes to the comparison between influencers versus content creators versus storytellers. That's the communication professor in me that wants to unpack that, because I believe that being in community should not require that you overshare or that you perform vulnerability. So I want to give you three things to look for when you are trying to identify healthy community and what that looks like for you as a leader. Number one, uh, selective. Healthy community is selective, not necessarily exclusive, although there are some exclusive communities that you may have to be invited into or apply to join or whatever. But healthy community is selective, meaning it's discerning, not necessarily always exclusive, but just discerning. Not everyone gets access to your inner processing. Not everyone gets access to your unfinished thoughts. Not everyone gets access to your vulnerable decisions. So there's some selectivity around how you operate and how this community actually functions together, because there's stewardship that's happening here. So a healthy community sometimes is selective, not in just who is a part of that community, but how that community gathers and how they operate with one another. I think also one of the signs of a healthy community is that that community is intentional. Healthy community does not happen by accident. It is built for purpose. It is built around consistency. It has shared expectations. It's not just when we feel like it, when we can get together because we're around the corner from each other, we live in the same neighborhood. Those things can help. But the intentionality means we meet every first Monday of the month, right? Like, right? That's the intentionality. We know what we're going to establish, or we know what we're going to accomplish when we come into this space. We know exactly what it means and exactly what it looks like. So when we hear intentional, these are the things we need to be considering or looking for specifically when it comes to community. Intentional community knows why it exists and what it is for. So again, healthy community is selective. Healthy community is intentional. And lastly, healthy community, I love this one, it is reciprocal. Healthy community is reciprocal. Reciprocal. This giving and receiving there's a support and a challenge. There's a presence and then there's a responsibility. If you're always pouring or if you're always extracting, that community isn't healthy. It is imbalanced. I was sharing with a friend of mine last week, and we were talking about the importance of friendships. This is a new friend and kind of a new fast friend, if you will. And just instant, you have those people that you just instantly click with. And so we were kind of talking about how friendships, evolve over time, especially as you age, right? A lot of folks talk about how hard it is to maintain or even to build friendships as you grow older. And we were having that conversation because again, it's just harder. Life is different as you age. And so we were talking about that, and one of the things we realized is that there may be some friendships or even some obligations or relationships where you feel obligated to where it's just not healthy. Doesn't mean that there's, these horrible interactions that we're having. It's imbalanced. You're always pouring. Or maybe you need to be transparent to see where you're always extracting. But this conversation, she and I were talking about people that we have friendships with that we're always pouring into and they're never pouring back. Healthy community is reciprocal. Healthy community does not remove the responsibility from you. It gives you the ability to carry it well because you're giving, they're giving. There's enough in their tank. There's enough in your tank. When they're low, you have something. When you're low, when they're low, you have something. And when you're low, they have something, right? Healthy community is selective, it's intentional, and it's reciprocal. So you don't need everyone. You don't need everybody. You don't need everyone to be in community with intimately. You just need the right people. Leaders don't always need more people, they need the right kinds of people. Things leaders need from community, as far as I'm concerned right now, you need spaces to think out loud without judgment. You need accountability without control. And I believe you need encouragement that doesn't dismiss your reality. And here's something that's important, especially now, relationships that remind you, as I was talking about that friendship, that new friendship I have, relationships that remind you who you are beyond your role, beyond your, you need places where I've got we have two doctors, three doctors, but we got two doctors attending the Zoom live session right now. In addition to those of you who are streaming live on YouTube, we're going to watch the replay, of course. What about, what would it be if everyone addressed us and them as doctor all the time? You need people in your life who remind you of who you are beyond the titles, beyond the roles, beyond the letters in front or behind your name. Yes, acknowledgement is important. Yes, professional designations are important and they have a proper time and proper place. But the richness of community many times really comes when you have people in your community who remind you who you are beyond the letters and the titles and the roles. So ask yourself, as I said, I always do a lot of reflection questions on Mindset Monday because it's all about getting your mindset ready for the month. Who do I trust with my unfinished thoughts? I've been asking myself that here lately. Who do you trust with your unfinished thoughts? Next, who sees me beyond my role? Where's their level of vulnerability? Where's their level of trust? Where's their level of intimacy in the relationship or in the friendship, in the professional connection? Who can I share with because they see me beyond my role? Next, who benefits from my clarity? Clarity is expensive, y'all. Clarity, you have to work for clarity. Sometimes you have to blood, sweat, and tears for clarity. Sometimes you have to pray and get into a space to gain clarity. Who benefits from that? Who benefits from the labor that you have put in to gain clarity? And whose clarity benefits me? All right. Now, let me model this for you. We've talked a lot about what community, what it means, what it looks like, what it doesn't look like, what you need, what you don't need. Let me model this for you because I don't believe that community is theoretical. It's specific, it's seasonal, and it also evolves as you evolve as a leader. So right now, my community, my approach to community has evolved. And what I need at this stage of my life and career has evolved as well. First, I think there are three things that you can consider as you evolve as a leader, and how you identify community. Let's go here. First, I think you need to be in a community where you have leadership responsibility. And this isn't always necessarily at work, but it could be. I believe you need, as you evolve, you need a space where you have leadership responsibility. So, I'll give you an example. I founded a community called Black Women Pray in November of 2024. And not only am I the founder of the community, I lead that community, but I also need, specifically, I believe you do too, need community with as a leader and as with other leaders who understand spiritual responsibility and organizational stability, sustainability, right? So this is not just solely, I'm leading this community solely on my passion for Black women, but also, and it's good, that's necessary, right? But also it gives me a chance as a leader to facilitate order and governance and even vision, right, as the leader and the founder of the community. But also, I get to steward this community. I get to steward this community and these women in prayer and communication to God and communication with and community with one another. And I take that seriously, not just as a leader, but as a believer as well. So I need people at this stage of life and career. I have leader responsibility over a community where there's synergy, right? Where there are people who believe the same things that I believe, and even if they don't, we can work those things out together. And so this community for me, Black Women Pray, I believe that in this space, as the having leadership responsibility, I need people who can both hold faith and structure in the same conversation. I think the second thing as you evolve as a leader, the kind of community you should be paying attention to, what your role should be, is as a network refresher. You are coming to refresh your network. I put this one here because we often are part of organizations, or we're part often, whether it be an association, a membership association, whether it be like a fraternity or sorority, whether it be like something related to what we do professionally, or even in our faith communities. We are in communities and we're in them forever. I've been a 20-year member. I'm a 30-year member. But sometimes you need communities where you're the newbie. You're the new person, or you don't know anybody and they don't know you, right? They have no idea what you've accomplished. They have no idea, where you went to school and where you're from or nothing like that. Everyone has to start over, or even you have to come to that space and start over. I call it a network refresher. I am on year 22 of entrepreneurship. And I think as you open yourself up to new experiences, it will introduce you to a new community. And so I recently was accepted to the NASDAQ, I believe it's the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center Milestones Circles. And it's basically a community of women business owners who are thinking about how to grow and scale their business. Now, you would say, well, 20 years in, you know what to do. I do know what to do, but I can't assume, as we said earlier, that I know everything to do. Maybe at this stage of my career, I need a refresher. I need peers who are thinking about scaling and innovation and long-term impact. And not just, the folks who I've trusted for the past 20 years or so. And as I think also as I go into this community, there may be a woman in this program who is on year 2, and I'm on year 22. I may be able to give and support and invest time into the women that are in that community, and they may know some things that I don't know. And so, community at this level for me isn't about affirmation because I've had 20 years in entrepreneurship. It's about sharpening. It's about being in a new space where I can challenge what I think and go beyond, what I thought I knew and work toward what's sustainable. And then I think, so one, you need a community where you have leadership responsibility. You also need a community where you are the network refresher. You're refreshing your network going into a new space. And I believe, and this is because I'm also experiencing this, I think you need a community where you can take a personal reset. So many of you who've been following me, or you're already in my community, or you just know me, I took a sabbatical from the classroom last year and decided that after 13 years as a professor, 14 years as a professor, I needed to really reconsider if I wanted to continue to teach and wanted to continue to be in the classroom. I burned the candle at both ends almost all my career. And was full-time entrepreneur 8 years, yeah, 8 years before, 7 years before I became a professor. And from that point on, after those 7 years, I'm teaching in the classroom at the university, and I'm running a business full-time. All right. Full-time employees, clients all over the place, right? And so eventually I said, I need to make a decision. I don't know that I want to do this anymore. And I will also say personally, after I think a lot of loss, a lot of grief, a lot of mourning the past few years, I want to say maybe the past 6 years, through COVID, even since COVID, right? A lot of that has happened for me. I don't know about you, but a lot of that has happened for me. And even through COVID, a lot of prolonged isolation that many of us, I see many of my clients going through this prolonged isolation that we've experienced during and after COVID. It has required me and many others to rediscover close and intimate friendships and relationships. This is not an absolute I believe, an absolute, or this is rather, this is an absolute necessity. It is an absolute necessity to rediscover relationships, to take a personal reset. I love people and I'm grateful that people love me. But as we evolve, there are versions of us, new versions of us that we all need to relearn again. You need to relearn yourself, and other people need to relearn you. And so I'm learning how to be held in a community again and not just to be strong. I'm learning how to be a container for others in my community. I'm learning how to be, here we go, leaders. I'm learning how to be less productive and more present. I am declaring and have been declaring the past couple of years, and that's why I left the university. That's why I went on sabbatical. I am declaring and have been, and or I'm not just declaring it now. I'm actually living it out right now. I declared and live out less doing, more being. Less doing, more being. And so I believe that your personal reset is how you should show up in community. You need a community space where you can go in and do a personal reset. You can go rediscover old relationships. You can reconnect with folks you haven't talked to in a while. You can actually rediscover folks you see every day. Who do you need to rediscover? Is it a spouse? Is it a child? Is it a friend who you talk to on a regular basis, but you really, right, that connection is just different. It's still real, but it's different. Who do you need to rediscover? Probably need to rediscover you. That's what the personal reset does. Because when you're in community and you're focused on that personal reset in your community, you get a chance to rediscover you and everyone else around you. So I welcome you to consider how you show up in those spaces. A community where you have leadership responsibility, a community where you are showing up as a network refresher, and a community where you are intentional about a personal reset, resetting and reconnecting with those relationships that you have. So I challenge you, ask yourself, what do I need right now that I cannot provide for myself? What do I need right now that I cannot provide for myself? Ask yourself this, what do I have already that I've not fully leaned into? I think that's where your personal reset community or your efforts come in. What do I have that I haven't already leaned into or fully leaned into? Here's another one. Where am I carrying weight alone that was never meant to be solo? What weight am I carrying that was never meant for me to carry alone? Another one. What communities do I have, but I underutilize them? Here's one. Here's one I've had to ask myself recently. What kind of community do I wish I had? And I now have that community. But and I didn't realize I did, but I did. I didn't realize it was what it was doing for me, but I knew I now have it. What kind of community do I wish I had? And for me, I had to go build it. I had to go build that one. Lastly, which communities, as I said earlier, or just kind of alluded to, which communities do I need to intentionally build? Right? If I don't have it, is there something that I need to create? And I'll give you this one. Where might I be withholding when I actually have something to give? Where might I be withholding when I actually have something to give? Now, we're wrapping up, y'all. I try to keep these Mindset Monday sessions to about 45 minutes so we have a chance for questions for those of you who are live. Sometimes the questions are just in the chat instead of unmuting. It's easier for the YouTube folks. Let me see if anybody is anything on YouTube. I don't see anything on YouTube just yet. All right. So we're here. We've had a good conversation, or at least I hope you think we've had a good conversation. So if something stirred in you today, pay attention to that. You don't have to overhaul your entire life. You just may need one conversation, one safe space, One thought partner who can help you unpack the one thing you've been carrying alone. All right. I hope this has helped. If anyone has any questions, those of you who are here with me via Zoom, feel free to type those questions in the chat. It would be great. We really appreciate that. But for the next month or so, I'm opening up my calendar for deep dive clarity calls. These are exclusive, focused 2 hour sessions, and I rarely make them available like this. But if you're ready to unpack, you have a heavy decision that you need to unpack. You need to think alongside someone who is going to champion you, or you need to step into a space that's safe but less familiar. Sometimes we have safe spaces, but the space is too familiar with us. And so there's not a lot of room for reinvention and thinking differently. And sometimes the folks who we're safe with, they want us to stay safe, right? They want us to stay safe and they want us to stay who they think we are, rather than helping us evolve. Maybe they don't know how to help us evolve. And so I would ask you to think about what that means. Even if you already have community, you may not know who to walk with right now. And so I'm going to open up my calendar. It has officially opened up for a few more of those clarity calls. They are 2 hour sessions, so I do not do them regularly, but I will open them up. Hey, Dr. Pat. Dr. Pat says, did you go back to the university to pursue other roles or did you stay? And whatever you chose, what were the deciding factors behind your decision? That's a great question, Dr. Pat. So I decided to take a sabbatical altogether. I took a work break completely. I resigned from teaching, and then I decided to look at Advisor 83, my business, and revamp some of that too, specifically because a lot of our work was geared toward DEI, and we had a ton of clients, which but we had a ton of clients, and it was really busy. And then a lot of the coaching work, corporate coaching and the one-on-one coaching with the high profile public figures a lot of that comes from my PR background, that started to kick up. And my heart just it was like a magnet to that work. Yes, I love working with companies, but working with individuals again, evolving as a leader, that's where my heart was, to work with leaders more and more. And so yes, we still work with clients, corporate clients, but I wanted to spend some time with all the chaos with the DEI work and the culture work and things of that nature. I really wanted to spend some time with individuals because I realized that individuals were hurting a lot. And so I decided to take sabbatical from the classroom, and um I am still processing if I am to go back to the classroom. It will not be the way that I have before. With being either full-time or at the undergraduate level, it would really have to be a fit for my life at this stage. So no, I don't intend to go back right away. I intend to. Now, I am doing research. I have some fun research I'm working on. And typically, as you know, when professors go on sabbatical, we're researching. And so oddly enough, I've been able to do a significant amount of research based on the work that I do as a coach and a consultant that I didn't get a chance to do while I was in the classroom every day. So I don't know that I will go back. If I were to go back, you said with the deciding factors to behind my decision, fatigue, uh, the complexity of being in higher ed right now, um, being in spaces where you bring a level of excellence and it's not met back with you. It's just there's the reciprocity is not there. Um, also, having a sense of where and the industry is going, and any of you who are watching this based on what industry you work in, um, having a sense of where the industry is going and watching the industry stay in stay in this archaic age, um, seeing the need for development and seeing progress toward that, but also realizing that in many cases we're still very much behind. And so, how do we lead? And so, sometimes, of course, you have to stay so you can lead within. right? In some cases, you have to lead out. You have to lead out. You have to lead without, if that makes sense, right? And so that was my heart, and that's why I'm really excited about taking. Even I'll give you an example. For those of you who are watching, know me. Most of you who are watching me on YouTube know me as an executive coach. Um, you don't know me as a professor, but I've been able to take the work that I've done as an executive coach in developing a research topic. Specifically, I want to look at two things. One I'm looking at right now, the other I'll look at later on this year, but I want to look at two things as it relates to an executive coach. I'm actually researching right now the phenomenon of the first generation wealth builder of color. And that first generation wealth creator of color learning how to create wealth through virtual knowledge communities, right? Where they are paying into or buying into a membership, and they are learning how to start businesses. And they're not just learning from or learning a new trade, right? They're not going to a university to learn a new trade. They're in a Zoom call. They're in a Zoom call learning how to generate, an additional stream of income. Communities like Earn Your Leisure, right? Communities like that. And so that's the only one I can think of right now, but there are several, or a community that I've been a part of and been a facilitator for, an executive coach for, and that's Dream Block, ran by my friend Anicia Williams. In Raleigh, North Carolina. And so there are many of these communities and they've been around for a while, but now we're finally starting to see a slow increase of household wealth, specifically generational wealth. And this generational wealth is hard to measure. We're starting to see an uptick in household income, specifically from in communities of color. And the wealth is not being generated from a full-time job. The wealth is being generated from a business. And so I'm exploring what it means for first generation wealth creators to come into a virtual knowledge community and identify how to become the first generation wealth creator. And one of the reasons um, that my executive coaching informs is because I realized through the executive coaching that many of first time millionaires, etc., of color, they deal with several things. They deal with success guilt, the guilt of their success, the guilt of being the only one. They deal with decision fatigue, and unfortunately, as much as I'm challenged by this concept, they deal with imposter syndrome. And so I realized, where are these people gaining their wealth? They're not all signing record deals and NFL contracts. They're starting businesses. How did they learn where did they get this framework from to start their business? Oh, they go to a Zoom, they're in a Zoom community, talk about community. They're in a knowledge community, and they're going to the community on Monday nights from 8 to 10, and they're learning how to build their business. And it's 400 people on the call, and 85% of them are people of color. And so that practice has now informed, right, the research that I'm doing. So no, not officially in the classroom, not officially going back at any point as far as I know. I'm going to be led. I'm going to be led, and if I am led to serve again, I will. But right now, that is this decision that I made, and I'm grateful for people like you and others who are, Dr. Pat, who've been a part of my community in higher ed, to not only cheer me on, but to just have access to, right, to have access to people like that. So thank you for your question. And thank you. It does take courage and to change and do some things. And so I encourage all of you who are watching the stream, watching the live. Thank you to those of you who are watching, got several people watching on YouTube. But thank you all for joining me today. And I hope that the idea around community has given you a good your mindset is if you're thinking about it, you're going to be thinking about it for the next couple of weeks. We'll be back next month, the first Monday of every month with another Mindset Monday. As I said, I opened up some clarity calls for you, open up those sessions. And so if you already have community, but you may not know who to talk to right now, go to arielellis.com, click on the top of the website, book a call with me. Select deep dive clarity call. It's also a strategy session. So we're in a deep dive clarity call strategy session for 2 whole hours. And of course, you can go to the website and book that arielellis.com. But for those of you who are watching on LinkedIn, let's stay connected. Maybe you know me, or maybe you never met me before. That's fine. Send me a DM. Send me a DM and just say, hey, let's talk. Let's grab a coffee chat or whatever. I do have a private link for that. I have to have a private link for that. But I'd love to just connect with you and just say, hey, especially if we've been connected online, but we've never talked, I would love to change that. Leadership is never meant to be lonely. And so none of us have to lead alone in this season. So I'd love to hear from you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the folks who are in the Zoom. It's good to see you. Really, really grateful. And I love to talk to y'all offline as well. Please feel free to reach out. I'll send you a follow-up note and just thanking you for being here. To those of you who are on YouTube, feel free to go to my website if you need any more information about the work that I do and you want to grab one of those clarity calls. I only have a few, only opening those up for a short period of time. Thank you all so much. And I will see you next